Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about something fascinating and mysterious, Nibiru. And the reason why is because a lot of information is flying around about this mysterious new planet that is supposed to kind of orbit between two solar systems, our solar system, and something else which is farther away. The whole idea, the whole notion is being propagated. And actually, this was something that with the 2012 nonsense came into light, and a lot of people were either hoping that Nibiru is coming in, or were really, really scared about it because there was a lot of information, as I said, flying around that was completely nonsense or nonsensical, but no one really knew. No one was sure about anything. And then came Bernadette Brady way back in 2006 or 7, or maybe earlier. So right about, but before the 2012 hysteria. And she highlighted what Nibiru was in her visual astrology newsletters. Unfortunately, she hasn't published them for a while. The last one appeared sometime in 2006 or 7. It's a shame. You can still find them in their archives if you Google them. She started dealing with Babylonian visual astrology. She did a wonderful job highlighting things and explaining things, how to interpret them. The problem is because that the a lot of stuff is was saved by by the desert. Those cuneiform tablets, but the astrologists don't really understand astrology, and astrologers are not able to read these. And this would be an interesting project. I'm smiling because I did this video in Hungarian like a week ago, and of course our academia immediately attacked me. So it's like, it was so funny. It was really funny because here's the problem. This is the biggest problem, that that nowadays most universities are run by cretins, are idiots, who are doing ideology. And there's a saying that truth depends on where you start the story, what timeline you choose, because it's always a segment of truth. And the more you go back to history, the less you understand what's going on, because history has been so many times rewritten by the victors, by the ones who won this or that fight. So anyhow, if we go back, and I'm not going to enumerate the misinterpretations. This video is not about telling you who is right. I'm just simply recounting what Bernadette Brady told us about Nibiru, which is a phase of Jupiter. It's not a single planet. It's not something mysterious. It's not an outer planet, something. Interestingly enough, there was one, I will tell you about one person, who is Barbara Henn-Clow, who is the wife of Robert Hand, a very respected astrologer. And Barbara ventured into some very interesting stuff. She wrote one of the first books on Chiron, so she has big merits as well. And I think she proposed at least 25 years ago the potential that there is this planet Nibiru. I don't think she called it Nibiru, but I remember that she proposed that it has like a 3,600-year orbit, and it's coming and going into the solar system, but it's linked to another solar system outside ours. And whenever it comes in, it wreaks havoc, and everything is disrupted, and we have cataclysms and whatever. And the problem with this is that now we know that 3,600 years is not such a big deal within the solar system. It's not a particularly long orbit. We have orbits that are 40,000, 36,000, or 12,000 years. So, even if it should be, if it was really something that is moving in between solar systems, it should be much, much longer. So that was one thing. And I think she was one of the reasons why even people who are very serious about stuff adopted this potential planet. So let's take a look at what Nibiru is. And for this, we need to go back to the creation story, Enuma Elish, which, why is it 2 Ds? Sorry. Yeah, I need to sometimes correct myself. So I apologize. Anyhow, it means in Akkadian language, crossing or point of transition. That's what Nibiru means. And it is mentioned first of all, in the Akkadian creation story. Enuma Elish means when up there. So these are the two first words, by the way, of the creation story, which is about 70 tablets, and tells you how the world was created. And in the original story, it is Apsu and Tiamat who create the whole world, and then their kids are of course the second generation of gods and goddesses. And then in the Akkadian period, this goes into another direction, and then all of a sudden Marduk becomes important, and he's the one who kills Tiamat, her mother, and cuts her into two, and out of her body creates the earth and the sky. So that's practically it, and he becomes the chief god, which is associated with Jupiter. And it's also important to remember that whatever is very bright and visual in Mesopotamian astrology, that celestial object is filled with power. And there are two occasions when this happens. Number one, when an object is up in the night sky, either practically alone or just very bright, and is up there all night. This was considered to be important. And of course, the heliacal rising. So the two important positions of a bright celestial object was either a heliacal rising before the sun. We will tell you why. And then the other one when it was culminating in the night sky. So those were the two power energies. And the brighter an object was, the more powerful it as a divine energy it was, according to the Chaldean priests. According to what Bernadette Brady found in Babylonian visual astrology, there were 5 distinct phases of Jupiter, and 4 of them were named and labeled, and the 5th one was just explained in those cuneiform tablets. One was called the Sulpa, which was 10 to 30 degrees ahead of the sun before sunrise. So it's a morning star. It is astrologically always behind the sun, either at a lower degree or just in the previous sign. And for this, you need to understand that the sun is much faster than Jupiter and always goes direct. So there's no retrograde sun. And the approximate average travel of the sun is 1 degree per day. So if you take a look at the chart and also something before sunrise, whatever you see right at the horizon, above the horizon, is something that was hidden a couple of days earlier because the sun was at that position. And both the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians watched very carefully what appeared in the before sunrise in the morning star at dawn, before dawn in the eastern horizon, because that particular object was in the underworld in the previous couple of days or weeks or even months. This was particularly true for the stars. And the heliacal rising star was always a herald. they interpreted in a way that it was down in the underworld, it died practically, and then it got resurrected, either resurrected itself or just happened to be resurrected, and is in the bark of the sun, and now traveling together with the sun, actually rising before it. The distance between the two celestial objects is going to grow, no matter how fast. The only exception is, of course, the moon, which is faster than the sun. But usually what happens is, especially with a slower moving object, every day the distance becomes 1 degree bigger. And finally, it loses its position as a morning star, as a heliacal rising star, whatever was there a couple of days earlier. And this 10 to 30 degrees is true when you move to latitudes that are closer to the celestial equator, or to the Earth equator. But up north, this can be actually 30 to 50 degrees because how things are rising there. Okay, so this is the Surpa. And this is one of the best positions for Jupiter. It means that it is a bright morning star, a heliacal rising star, and it brings you luck and happiness and expansion and everything that Jupiter brings in the traditionally nice way. The second of the Jupiter phases was called Sagmegar. As the sun is moving away from Jupiter, as you can see, on average, 1 astrological degree rises every 4 minutes. So in 2 hours, the distance will be 30 degrees, and in 5 hours, it will be 75 degrees. So you can tell that every day the distance will be bigger. Every day you have to watch how the heliacal rising star then all of a sudden becomes just another object in the night sky. And when the distance is around 75 degrees, let's say it's greater than 50, but doesn't exceed 75 or 80 degrees. This is when we say that that's the Sagmegar phase. It means that this Jupiter is completely average. It doesn't bring you exceptional luck or exceptional outstanding things, but it is nice. It still provides potential success. Okay, it's something important to remember that the Mesopotamian priests, also the Egyptian priests, were interested in the pre-dawn sky, pre-dawn. So it means that whatever comes up in the second half of the night sky was really important. Okay, so this is what happens. And after, so this phase, the Sagmegar phase, comes after the Surpa phase. So let's say 10, 15, 20, 30 days after the Surpa, it becomes Sagmegar anyway. So that's what is important. And then comes Nibiru, the famous Nibiru, and that's it. And they called Jupiter a Nibiru Jupiter when the distance started to become greater. So that's the third phase really in the row, if you consider it the sequence of Jupiter phases. So we are about, let's say, at least 60 days after the Surpa phase, but it could be as many as 80 days afterwards. And what happens is that after the second phase, the Chaldean priests were interested whether Jupiter reaches the culminating point before sunrise. I created a drawing for you to see that now we have the sun already up above the horizon, and Jupiter has not reached the midheaven. And this is called Nibiru. As Bernadette Brady remarked, the road is important, not the arrival, is the typical feeling of these people. So Jupiter arrives on the eastern horizon in the second half of the night, climbs higher and higher and higher, but gets dimmed by the rising sun before reaching actually the culminating point. And this is when you have such a Nibiru Jupiter, it simply means that you feel that you have great potentials, great talents, you are willing to work hard, but you still can't actually reach your greatest potentials. That's the feeling of a Nibiru Jupiter. And you only have a Nibiru Jupiter if Jupiter is behind the sun, usually two signs behind the sun. Okay, and but you need to check. What you need to do is, it's very easy to check. Take your chart. You can either move it. There are potentials, for instance, in solar fire, where you can actually rotate the chart and put the sun on the ascendant and see if Jupiter is reaching the midheaven or not, or just rotate your chart, your printed chart, move it towards the ascendant, move the sun towards the ascendant, and see where Jupiter is. If Jupiter falls to the western horizon, somewhere on the other side of the chart, you need to disregard it, because it's not going to do any of these phases. Okay, it's also interesting that, you probably realize that, okay, so it's very close to 90 degrees, which means that this is really a square. So if I have a Sun-Jupiter square, of course, it shows that I want to be successful, but for some reason, I can't be as successful as I wish I were. And there might be some truth in the fact that the square has become what it means, that it may come out of this Jupiter phase. I have no idea. There's another notion that it came from the half moon. So it's the sun-moon square is either first quarter or last quarter moon. Either or, I'm almost sure that there must be some truth in it, but here in the Mesopotamian visual astrology case, you don't need to have a square between the sun and Jupiter. You still might have a Nibiru Jupiter, which means that you won't get your greatest potential. At least this is what you fear. And then Neheru comes. This was the second, or maybe the best Jupiter phase. And this occurs when a very bright Jupiter rises at the eastern horizon in the second half of the night, is climbing higher and higher and higher, and reaches the midheaven before sunrise. And what they said is that they are split, that this Jupiter split the sky. So it's victorious. It's commanding the whole sky. And if you consider the later versions of Marduk, Jupiter and Zeus, and its thunderbolt aspect, it may come from this notion. So again, as I said, it's not so hard to determine whether you have a Nibiru or a Neheru Jupiter. If you have a Jupiter that is in the eastern portion of your chart, if you move the sun to the east as well. You just have to move it around and see if it reaches the midheaven or not. If it reaches the midheaven before sunrise, you have a Neheru phase, and then it's one of the best ones. It means that you can achieve whatever you want. But if it doesn't, if there is like 60, 70 degrees between Sun and Jupiter, unfortunately, that means that it is a Nibiru phase. And then the fifth version, the fifth phase, is not named according to the cuneiform tablets, but it is really when Jupiter is near the sun. As you know, whatever is near the sun is dimmed. The word ecliptic comes from this phenomenon, that the sun dims everything and then simply cancels out everything that it shines upon. So when the sun is up, you don't see anything. So in traditional astrology, you have two notions. It's actually, it comes from medieval astrology. One is to be under the sun, under the sun's beams, which is about 15 degrees away from the sun. And that's already a very dim celestial object. Occasionally in northern regions, you don't even see anything up in the sky, whatever is 15 degrees away from the sun. And then to become combust, which means about 5 to 8 degrees from the sun, is totally canceled out. So in Mesopotamian visual astrology, if you take a look at the myths, you will realize that two things happen. First of all, because to be near the sun is the meaning of going down to the underworld. So Ereshkigal, who was the goddess of the underworld, means a sun, a position near the sun, practically. So it's not a separate celestial object. So whenever an object is nearing the sun, it is ready to go down to the underworld. It loses its potentials. It loses its brightness. It's getting dimmed, and it means that it is starting to behave irrationally, not the way it usually behaves. And then when it's completely down in the underworld, it is usually very, very sensual, like Marduk story, if you go there, or again, it doesn't behave the way it usually behaves. And that's the key. So whatever is near the sun behaves in a different way. And it might be good or might be bad. If you consider rationality always very, very excellent, then something near the sun is not good. But if you think that, okay, being irrational or intuitive gives us another angle of things, then it may be even a good thing. Okay, so we are not, in karmic astrology, we are not labeling it, we are just noting it. Then, for instance, when Jupiter is nearing the sun and a little bit dimly visible just before sunrise, okay, then it means that Marduk has emerged from the underworld, and this distance will be 1 degree bigger. So it's actually Jupiter is getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And there's another position when actually the sun at sunset, after going down, highlights Jupiter just for a couple of minutes, and then Jupiter is also setting. This is the western sky, and here the distance will be getting less and less and less, and finally the sun will become exactly conjunct Jupiter or any celestial object. So that means simply that any object near the sun becomes irrational or intuitive or both. And again, it depends on your upbringing, your outlook on things, whether you consider this bad or good. So those are the 5 phases of Jupiter, and this is what Nibiru means. It's not a separate object according to the cuneiform tablets of Mesopotamia. It's simply a phase of Jupiter. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.